Hey guys, it's Olivie Blake, and this is me not writing. Okay, so welcome back to another of whatever these are. The three questions that I got asked are very personal in the sense that I can't really weigh in because I don't have all the information. So instead, I'm just going to have to relay pieces of my own experience. So even though they are different questions, they are a little bit related. So I'm probably just going to talk about them as a group. But before we get into that, I just wanted to say that I realized last week that all of our S.P.E.L.L. reads so far have been by white women. And I'm sorry it took me so long to realize that, which says a lot about the state of intersectional feminism. And I think I was also noticing because a lot of the debut fiction that I've picked up have been by white female authors. Which is great. I mean, it's great to celebrate the work of all women, but I have neglected to really take a closer look at which experiences we have been representing. Granted, it hasn't been a full year yet, but as of this month, it actually this month will be 1 year of S.P.E.L.L. I can just tell you now, April is going to be Orlando by Virginia Woolf because that is the theme of the Met Gala in May. So we're reading that on purpose. It is speculative about a man who goes into the future as a woman and has to live as a woman. Although it is not our future, it's still our past. That's not the point. So I think right now it's going to come down to either Pride, Prejudice, and Other Flavors, or another book you may have been seeing a lot about, which is Such a Fun Age. So it's going to kind of come down to whether we want to stay in the romance area or if we want to move into a little bit more of... Such a Fun Age is a really interesting book because it's quite an easy read because the complexity that it presents is very sophisticatedly woven, I think. And then I've never read Pride, Prejudice, and Other Flavors, but it seems like a fun time. So it's just kind of what the mood is going to be for March. I will be posting about it later today. On the day that I'm recording this, I haven't decided yet. However, if I still have not decided by the time this video posts, then feel free to weigh in. We will read both books at some point during this year. I just don't know which one we're going to read for March. Anyway, I'm sorry, as much as I was trying to vary things by genre and, by type of book we were reading and vary between contemporary and historical, white women are still very much at the forefront and I wasn't paying close enough attention to that. So yeah, so if you'd like to make any more suggestions about books written by women of color, I especially would like to choose fantasy books by women of color because I feel like there are a lot out there, but a lot of them are YA, so I'm not sure. I kind of want to take a closer look at them first to see if they really fit into the S.P.E.L.L. vibe. But if you have any suggestions, please do let me know. I also just finished The Most Fun We Ever Had. And the reason I'm telling you about this book specifically is because I didn't love it. The other thing, I don't know if you've noticed, this is debut fiction and it's a huge book. So that's unusual. This is an unusually large book for its genre, which is like literary upmarket. It's basically a family drama about wealthy white people in Chicago. Again, not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just, it does feel like the resonance there is maybe there isn't a lot of resonance there. But it was one of those books where it's just like, I would like to talk about it. I enjoyed the story. I got very caught up in the story. For as big as this book is, I did read it quite quickly, but I also hated a lot of the characters. So if you've read this book or would like to read this book, if you have any interest in sort of multi-generational family dramas, I don't know if you've noticed about me, but I love family dramas. I mean, The Commoner's Guide to Bedding a Royal is essentially a family drama. One for My Enemy is a family drama. I don't know what that is about me. I will discuss it with my therapist. The point is, if you want to talk about this book, talk to me about this book. I have a lot of thoughts. Okay, let's move on. These are all varying degrees of serious. Also, my dog is, as you can see, napping. Okay, so one is, Olivie, I broke down at work crying because I was lightly reprimanded for not getting my work done. What should I do? Should I quit? Help me. So, like I said, I can't really answer this question because I'm quitting your job is a very serious thing, especially if you have a lot of expenses, or if you are going to have a lot of expenses in the near future. You, of course, may be someone who maybe you can rely on your parents or you can rely on your spouse or your partner, and that's great, in which case maybe it's a good idea. I don't know if you have a history of quitting jobs when things get difficult. I don't know how difficult things have gotten. I will say that I have seen it happen where if you are working in an environment where the atmosphere is a little bit too, where people are too critical of you, or sometimes it's like, so my dog is a rescue dog, right? And he's very anxious. He's very, very jittery. And this is a common response in dogs when their original owner is too strict or potentially violent with them. So I think that you breaking down over something that you say it was just lightly reprimanding could certainly be evidence of someone taking you to task too many times without bothering to build you back up. So there is a definite possibility that you are in a work atmosphere that is not allowing you to do your best because maybe their criticism hurts you too much or too personally or is too stressful for you so that you can't perform at your best. And so even though you want to do better, because you're so anxious about doing better, it prevents you from actually improving. This is actually a very, very common thing. And this really might not be your fault. It probably is not, but I don't know what the situation is, but there's a good chance that it's not your fault and it might have something to do with your work environment. If you have a good relationship with your boss, or if you have like a quarterly review coming up or something where you can say that the feedback that you're getting is not helping you to be productive, it's not helping you to produce your best work, and either that might mean that you need a little bit of a different disciplinary approach. I mean, I don't know. Again, I don't know what your job is or what your boss's position is over you or what you got reprimanded for. But if you could ask for more positive feedback, that might help both of you. I would like to think that in most cases, it is best for the company if the employee is treated well. And you can gauge for yourself whether or not your employer is likely to take that stand. I mean, maybe you don't have to talk to the actual person who's making you feel this way, but maybe there's someone you can talk to. If not, then yeah, you might just be looking at a work environment that doesn't work for you. That it could just be a matter of, it might not even be their fault. It may just be a mismatch of, you need someone who is going to be more positive with you, and that's not them. Again, I'm just saying this because I don't want to make claims about things that I don't know about. But if it is a mismatch of environment or atmosphere, then that's something to keep in mind when you're looking for jobs in the future, to try and get a good read on who would be your direct supervisor, how they deal with work performance. A question to ask at interviews is how do you gauge performance? I think if you can ever talk to people who work for the company at like a lower level, where they're not just going to feed you the company line and they're going to be able to tell you what a normal day looks like, if they're actually happy at their job. Actually, when I was in law school, which is something we'll talk about later, one of the questions that I used to ask when I was going through the recruiting process was, do you like your job? And, they'll give you they're not going to tell you the absolute truth, but you can read a lot in their answer. You can usually tell by looking what a work environment is like. So that's just something to keep in mind for if you do decide to quit your job. But again, you do want to make sure, this might be the sort of situation where you try to stick it out for the next few weeks while you do some interviewing. Maybe the idea that another job is out there will help you to not feel so much pressure to perform as you are now. But I do want to make sure and tell you, I hope it doesn't alienate you. I hope you don't feel like you are, the fact that you can't handle this criticism is like a reflection of you or something you're doing wrong. It may not be that at all. It may be that whoever is above you is not maybe giving you the tools or the preparation to succeed as you probably could if you were more adequately prepared, or if you were well instructed, or if you were working in an environment where you felt like you were given all the tools to succeed. So in a lot of cases, this is a management failure. And it is okay if you find yourself afraid to make mistakes. Not okay as in push through it. Okay as in that don't be ashamed of that. That's just something that happens when you've been, hurt too many times by harsh criticism or by whatever sort of reprimanding you do usually get. I think there's this tendency to think of yourself as a person who makes mistakes just because you've made one mistake. Making a mistake doesn't make you mistake girl. It doesn't make you the mistake maker. It means that you made one mistake. But I can see how getting reprimanded, perhaps too harshly, can make it so that you're more likely to make mistakes. So again, this could very easily be a management failure, and therefore it might be better for you to leave. But I don't know. I do want you to feel better, though. I do. It sounds like, I don't know how long you've been unhappy at this job, if this is something that happens to you often, but yeah. And the reason I was kind of saying that a lot of these things are interrelated is because I also got this ask. Hi, Olivie-san. When asked that you went to law school, did you graduate? No, I didn't, as most people who watch this know, but I can talk about it a little more. Anyway, it says, I'm in law school too, and I don't like any of it. I don't see myself being a lawyer. I'm lost. I don't have a degree yet, and if I quit law school, then did I just do 4 years there for nothing? So I think this is part of the same kind of situation where you find yourself at a crossroads and kind of deciding what to do next. And this is another similar situation to the last question where I don't know what's going on. I just know that they're similar and that both of you are in a situation that you clearly need to make some changes, you need to make some adjustments, and whether that is leaving or changing something about how you're handling it is difficult to say. So all I can really do is relate to you my experience. So I have said a few times that my law school time was colored quite a bit by my bipolar diagnosis, which I got in probably the first week or so of law school. And, I had been showing symptoms of it much, much longer ago than that. I had been asked to be in psychotherapy as a freshman in college, and I ignored that little piece of advice. But then I had someone else in my life that I didn't want to be so desperately unhappy all the time for, and I think it's not even that. It's more the, I was just so unpredictable, and it's hard to live with someone who is very unpredictable. It's hard to, you end up walking on eggshells around them. This is actually the case with a lot of bad situations, including possibly the situation that you might be having with your boss, where if you can't predict how someone's going to react to things, then you become very skittish around them, which is what I did not want to happen with people and me. Anyway, no, I didn't finish law school. Things got quite bad before I left, and when I left, I did not really have a plan for what I was going to do next. I ended up writing a book. Not any of my current books. I had not progressed to that stage in my life yet. I worked for a nonprofit for a while. I kind of bounced around for a lot. I've said a few times that I had a lot of random jobs, and a lot of them were in that time period of when I left law school, and I just needed to have a job. All I knew, and again, this is also for the person with the job question, all I knew was that I was looking for a certain kind of environment. I was looking for a certain kind of feeling of stability. I wanted very specifically to be in an environment where I was sort of not doing the same day over and over. So I didn't really want to have a desk job. I wanted to do something where every day looked a little bit different. And I interacted with a lot of strangers. I'm very extroverted, so for me that's like I get energy from that. I siphon energy from other people. And on the surface, those look like things that were what made law appealing to me. But what was wrong with law school for me was I was a little too emotionally, I don't want to say unstable, but it was a little bit difficult for me to have a very demanding emotionally demanding job. I worked for the public defender's office, so I saw a lot of people get sentenced to prison or sit in jail for a really long time, and I got really, really intimately familiar with the way that the American criminal system fails. And for someone who was just barely managing their own mental health, it was really hard for me to take on the emotional burdens of other people. And it was really hard for me to look at a system that I knew was broken and act like that was, it was too, as a lawyer, there's only so much you can do. You can't actually change the laws. You can't actually bend the laws. All you can do is like try to convince a judge and jury to interpret them in a very biased way. And there are also a lot of lawyers that you come up against who don't particularly have a lot of investment in the human aspect of it. I also worked with a lot of social workers and parole officers who were really, and not through any, they were very disillusioned, and that's not, I can see how that would happen. I was not there for that long. So for me to say like, oh, how can you just not care about this person who can't afford to get to the courthouse? It isn't their problem because it can't be their problem because they have so many problems. This is just such a flawed system. And it was frustrating to me to the point where I could not handle both my own, my own burdens and other people's as well. It just became irresponsible. There is a lot to be said about putting on your own oxygen mask before helping others. I mean, I do often feel a lot of guilt about the fact that I have seen the ills in the system and am no longer working in an active way to heal them. I think I am working in a passive way, I like to write about these things in fiction because for me that is a safe enough distance for me to still talk about these things and maybe be able to persuade other people to see things the way that I see things and to feel empathy the way that I feel it, and to understand sort of the things that other people go through. And I hope that has, I hate to say trickle down because that there's so much attached to that term, but that it has some effect on people who read it. I like to think that maybe people who read all of my work, not just my books, my fan fiction too, walk away with an understanding of a mindset and an experience that is different from their own. So ideally, you would find pieces of yourself in my work, but also pieces that are unfamiliar, and maybe you can understand the world a little bit better, someone else's world a little bit better. And I know that's not the same thing as actually getting someone out of jail, which is certainly a rush. I got to do that once, but unfortunately I got to do that once and once only. And every single other day I saw countless other people go to prison. So, and anyway, that's just my story. That's a whole long story. I think that it's not for nothing. You wouldn't have just gotten nothing out of the last however many years you've been there. I'm sorry, I've forgotten. But you have gained a skill set. You have gained many skills that you can put to use some other way. I don't know what those limitations would be in terms of degrees or what you could do, but there's certainly things you could do in the meantime to try to figure those things out. You have the rest of your life to figure out kind of your place in the world. I like to think that we're all trying to maximize our, not use, but the way that we can do the most good, the most meaningful thing that we could be here to do. My skills, I think, were not so much the lawyering as it was the being able to communicate an experience, which is why I write now. And there might be something like that for you, and it's okay if you don't see it yet. You might have to try a lot of things that don't work before you find the thing that does work. And I don't know what that would mean for you economically, financially. I don't know what that means if you have somewhere you can go, if you were to stop your program or maybe shift gears. I know I know a lot of people who have already changed careers several times. If you feel like you're on the wrong path, it's okay. It's very normal to have to change paths. I mean, the idea that you would have picked the thing that you're going to do for all of the rest of your lifetime when you're in your early 20s is really quite insane. Or that you would have picked it like I thought that I knew what I was going to do when I was 18, but I was obviously a fool because an 18-year-old is a child. And, I think what you should be doing, what we all should be doing at age 18, is exploring everything there is in the world and realizing that we maybe won't know our place in the world until several years after that, if at all. Oh, that's great, isn't it? The last question was, hi Olivie, have you had any experiences with substance abuse? I think I'm heading down a bad path and I'm so ashamed to even think about admitting to my partner or my parents what is going on. So I talked about this a little bit. I do have some experience with it. Like I said, I'm bipolar, so I did have some self-destructive tendencies, but mostly what I wanted to tell you, and that I did say on Tumblr, is that anyone, you may not be having these specific problems, but I think there are many times in our lives where we come across some sort of obstacle that we're ashamed about, that we don't want to tell other people about because we don't want to admit that we're struggling. Because on some level, there is a lot of shame to the idea that other people seem to be getting by just fine, and you're having this private struggle, you're behind compared to other people's timelines, or, a lot of times it just seems, we can always see how things are going to get worse, but we're not able to see the ways that they might get better, because a lot of that, is randomness. A lot of it is luck. I mean, a lot of life in general, the future is, as much as there are times that we feel like we can see what's going to happen next, we actually can't. We can run those scenarios over and over, but we forget about the fact that there are so many things that are statistically unlikely in good and bad ways that can alter our paths. If I hadn't met Mr. Blake that first week of law school, would I be a lawyer now? Would I be a lawyer with a substance abuse problem now? And these are all really interesting, alternate universes in which I exist as a completely different version of myself. I would not ever have predicted that I would be here talking to you on YouTube and happily married to the love of my life. I really would not have thought that would happen to me, just in general. So sometimes choosing to believe that things will change for the better is the bravest thing that you could possibly do, and certainly the most important, because choosing to accept that your reality doesn't have to stay this way is really enormously important. Where it comes to substance abuse in particular, the people who get hurt the most when it comes to addiction issues is everyone except for the addict themselves. Everyone except for you is going to suffer if you don't get the help you need, it's hard to think of it that way. I think we get sort of mired in our own unhappiness, that we think maybe it'd be better if we just withdrew and we kind of like stayed here in our own little island of misery. But you know what they say, no man is an island, and there are people who love you, which means that when you suffer, the people who love you suffer a little bit too, sometimes more than a little bit. I would think that, if my best friend were treating herself the way that I was treating myself at my worst, I think that would have really hurt me. And, it was easy for me to become numb to what I was doing to myself. But then the moment I thought about what that would mean for the other people in my life, or what that would mean if it was like, if it was my partner who was going through that and they felt like they couldn't trust me or they couldn't come to me with their problems, that would be, that would be a little bit tragic for me, because I would think, haven't I always given them reasons to believe that they are loved, or that I can be trusted with their burdens? I guess a lot of this is about burdens, in good and bad ways. But anyway, yeah, getting help means trusting somebody in your life. I think that you reaching out to me, even though it seems like such a small step, is a huge thing, because that is acknowledging it to me means that you have acknowledged it to yourself, which means the next step is finding someone to help you. And, you know, there's a lot of ways that you could treat this problem. I mean, depending how severe it is, it's anywhere from seeking professional help to seeking, you know, like a spiritual help to creating art. I do think, you know, I don't want to be irresponsible about it. Obviously, there is a clinical factor here, and you might need actual medical professional help. But creating something can do a lot of good. I mean, I write books for a reason, and part of that reason is honestly just to survive. So there are ways that you can deal with that pain that don't have to be shame. You don't have to treat your problems as if they are shameful, because they aren't. I don't want to depress you. I know it's Monday morning, but yeah, if you need help, I will help you as much as I can to try and point you in the right direction. But this is definitely something you probably want to go to a therapist. I've said before, like a priest or a minister, because they are, at least you can see them, you can talk to them for free, and they can definitely point you in the correct direction. But yeah, never shame. Shame is sort of a, you know, it's never the people who should feel shame that feel shame. It's always the people who are just who are like internalizing their own suffering. And you know, and don't do that. Don't destroy yourself, which is, you know, truly ironic coming from me, because I understand the impulse. I honestly understand the feeling of, I can see all of my flaws and I would like to inflict some harm because I maybe deserve it. Or maybe I just don't want to feel anything at all, and this would be easier. It would be easier if I felt nothing, and nobody cares about me anyway, so no one will care if I do this to myself. But that's not true. That's just what you can see from being inside your experience, which is currently, your perspective is currently being shaped by your experience, and your experience needs some healing. So I hope that you get it. So this is sort of a weirdly serious day. I hope that any of that was helpful. But in any case, this has been me, Olivie Blake, not writing, and I'll see you next week.